Morning to those on the West Coast. So wonderful to see all these beautiful faces of our NABJ members. Thanks to each of you for taking time on what I know is a very busy Saturday to join us for the print database inaugural masterclass. Our purpose here is to help journalists prepare for job opportunities. I was pleased when President Dorothy Tucker asked me to head the NABJ editors database. I knew that while she was on the board, she had established the producers database, and that's doing very well under the leadership of veteran broadcast journalist James Hayes. He has been doing an incredible job. But Dorothy wanted to offer the same service to NABJ's print members. The purpose of the database is to connect NABJ members with news managers who are looking to hire. Even if you are not seeking a job right now, the database is a great place for your resume to reside. In addition, the database allows NABJ to collect much needed information about the makeup of our membership. So the organization, so we can do a better job of providing programming to address the needs of editors and senior writers. Please help NABJ continue to build this important database by contributing your information. In doing so, you are helping yourself, but also other NABJ members as we continue to support each other in the quest for a long and fulfilling career in the media. We are exceptionally pleased to have with us today Kevin Merida to kick off our masterclass series. Please know that the information that Kevin will share today will be great guidance for broadcast, digital, as well as print journalists, for any journalist who wants to move ahead in their career. We now invite NABJ President Dorothy Tucker to bring greetings. After all, the editor and producer databases are the results of her vision. Dorothy?
Thank you, Lynn. And good morning and good afternoon to everybody. Thank you, as Lynn said, for joining us today. This is really exciting for me because I think it's very important that we focus on this. And it's interesting, you know, Lynn talked about the purpose is to connect managers with our great talent. And literally about 2 weeks ago, I got an email from a young brother in Cleveland. And he said in the email that he, you know, wasn't looking for a job, but he had signed up for the database, and he got a call from someone from USA Today who saw his resume, reached out to him, offered him a job, and it was an opportunity he did not pass up. And he just wanted me to know that it's working. And needless to say, that made my day. And I know there are many more stories out there because I've heard of people who are getting some opportunities, and that's what it's all about. You know, time and time again, periodically, I'll tweet something out that reminds people to sign up for it. And what I really need your help with is letting your top editors know that the database does exist. Probably about 2 weeks ago, we made it public that we updated the database, and we gave managers direct access. What that means is that all your boss has to do is go to nabjcareers.com, and they can have direct access, and they can see everybody's resume, and they can just go right in and contact any of our members that they want to. So I just want to remind everybody that this is something that works. It's something important. And as Lynn also pointed out, in a broader picture, it's about also for us to continue to be engaged, for us to hear from people like Kevin Merida. And in the future, this is just the beginning You're going to hear from so many other leaders in this organization and hear their stories that are good for all of us. Before I go, I want to make a quick promotion for our NABJ store. All right, see, that's it, that's it. It is now open. And wait a minute, I also have my sweatshirt. So please get your gear for the NABJ store. And thank you again for signing up. Michael? Oh, and wait a minute. Thanks again to Lynn and Michael and Stan Washington for helping out, for making this a huge success. Lynn, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. I now turn over the master class to Michael Days, who recently retired from the Philadelphia Inquirer after a long and productive career in print journalism. He's been a long time participant and leader in NABJ. Now, Michael is partner with Editors on Call. It is a pleasure to have Michael as my co-chair. Hosting this Michael class was Mike's idea. And he is so connected that he was just able to pick up the phone and call Kevin Merida, who graciously agreed to share his insights with us today. Mike.
Thank you, Lynn. Before I do an introduction of Kevin, just want to say that if you have folks, if you have questions, please put it in the chat room. Both Lynn and we've got Walter Middlebrook, who I think a lot of you know, who's now the Foster Professor of Practice at Penn State University. They're going to be monitoring the chat for questions for Kevin. I think we're expecting about 150 people to actually be on our call today. So we want to make sure that we're covering a whole lot of territory. And then to Mr. Merida, Kevin, you know, I would argue is a treasure in our midst and has been so for a very long time. You know, he and several other students at Boston University created a new newspaper called Black Folk. And you know, you got to go back to the 70s for that. So he's been doing this in our business for more than 40 years. He went on to graduate from the summer program for minority journalists at Berkeley, and now I think a lot of folks know that as the Maynard Institute. Then he landed a job at the Milwaukee Journal, where he worked as a general assignment reporter and also as an editor. For 10 years, starting in 1983, he worked for the Dallas Morning News, where he served as a special projects reporter, local political writer, national reporter, White House correspondent, and assistant managing editor in charge of foreign and national news coverage. He went to the Washington Post in 1993, where he first covered Congress. He joined the paper's national political reporting team to cover the 1996 presidential campaign and joined the style section in 1997. He was promoted to associate editor in 2001 and appointed national editor in 2008. From 2001 to 2004, he wrote the column Side Streets, which was syndicated by the Washington Post Writers Group. And in
We may have lost Michael.
Okay, I thought it was me for a minute.
Okay, good too.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, geez.
Kevin, why don't you get started, and I'm sure Mike will join us and finish the introduction. But
yeah, he was doing a good job. I was impressed.
So
we all know how this system is. We've been living with this for almost going on 2 years now. Zoom, you zoom in, you zoom out. So it's all good. I think, Mike, I can help him here. I mean, just to complete that, I was at the Washington Post for 22 years. And, after being national editor, right after the Obama, the historic election, that brought Barack Obama into the presidency, I took over the national staff. And then I was really, thinking I'm going to get back to writing now. I did my time. I did 4 years running the national staff. It was a great experience. And now I'm ready to get back to my craft and writing. But things happen sometimes in your business, in your industry, your newsroom. Managing editor left, who was Liz Spade at the time. Marty Barron came in. There was a new editor. And so I was kind of in a position, you needed somebody to help the transition for Marty. And we were in that period where the Washington Post, like a lot of places, were in the midst of a digital transformation. It's really difficult in a big newsroom like the Washington Post. And so Marty asked me to be managing editor, and I did. And that was, I used to joke that I was kind of an accidental managing editor, and in some ways, an accidental senior leader. But being that, I think it really changed how I really look at the profession. I see some people on here. First of all, it's great to see the screen, because a lot of times when you're doing these things, there's in webinar format, you can't see anybody and you don't know, you're talking to a hole. But I see a lot of my friends and people I work with. Wow, Candace and Monica and Tony Marcano, who was in the summer program for minority journalists, which is like the formation of just my thinking about our profession in 1979. But so you go back and you're thinking about all of these things that I think we care about: diversity and inclusion in our industry, how to get there. We probably all have been in many meetings. I was in many meetings where delegations, and you come to management, you come to leaders, the top executives, and you say what you need and what you want, and people listen, and they're all well-meaning people. Most of them, they want to increase diversity, but how you get to do that, where it sits on your value system as a leader and an executive is really everything in the world. And it's, this intellectually, that it's important to have people at the very highest levels. And I don't mean just editor in chief and executive, but CEOs and the owners of places. That intellectually that's important, but until you actually get into the senior executive ranks, you realize it's everything. It's literally everything. It's the difference between drastically and intentionally changing our business. And you need that in every industry, certainly in our industry. It's everything, because it's one thing to kind of know it. It's another thing to be inside and see it. And when you see how decisions are made and how people are evaluated and who gets opportunities, when you have the position to change that, you see that, man, a lot of these decisions they're like most human decisions. They're based on subjective criteria. They're based on how people grew up, how they think about the world, how they see talent, how they see life, and there's so many subjective things. And so we need to have us in that spectrum, so that it should look like everybody, right? It should look like the places that when we go and we're out and we hang out, it should look like us. It should be familiar. And so that's really kind of my eye-opening thing, is that once I became national editor of the Washington Post, then managing editor, a lot of people had a lot more interest in some of the things about diverse inclusion, all the desks. Everybody's figuring out, because they know that's important to me. And it also allowed me to really think about, I went to the Undefeated, which was a whole separate experience of starting a new, I'd say a startup in this digital era inside of a big company. And by the way, it's very hard to do. We have a lot of startups. People start them up and with venture capitalists, and they go out on their loan. But here we're trying to create something inside ESPN, which is the #1 by far, nobody's close, sports media company in the world. And we're taking something that was essentially with a mission of exploring the intersections of race, sports, and culture. And ESPN, by the way, about 8,000 employees. It's inside the biggest entertainment company in the world, Walt Disney Company. And so you put those things together and you're trying to start something inside these mega companies, which is really hard to do with the staff. What we had didn't change much, 40, and sometimes it dipped below 40. And the things that we tried to do were, we said we weren't going to be a website because that was a 1.0 internet term, that we were really going to have our daily platform, because you have to have a URL, you have to have a home. Everybody has to have a home, an address, some place to go where you can direct people and you can experiment. But then we were going to do live events and go into communities and bring athletes and community leaders together to discuss gun violence. We brought the first African-American president to the largest HBCU for a really intimate conversation of the kind he had never had. We were going to do things like that. We create children's books. We were going to experiment with form, comedy, poetry, and we did a number of music videos. We just kept expanding the boundaries of how you can reach people. But the reason we could do that was because we were starting something new. We didn't have culture. We had our own culture. We developed it. And by the way, the people that we did it with all look like us. So we managed to hire, and I know sometimes people say, well, man, you can't find somebody for this, and there's a short pool for that. We hired every kind of journalist and talent we wanted, and they all look like us. And we did in 3 months. I mean, if I'd had like a year, I would say like I could have built, 10 Undefeated. So there's enough journalists out there, and we had long lines of people who wanted to work with us. So, I just say all to say that sometimes, we all know this, but then that when you actually demonstrate it and prove it and make it real, and you go and we didn't have a production company, but we managed to do, I think by the time I left, something like 15 television specials. Dorothy knows the people in television know this is hard to do. We did it. We brought people together and put them together. We did documentaries. We partnered with people. We expanded across the Walt Disney Company, started putting out records, with Disney Music Group, on way to a record label. We started going to be a book imprint, there's going to be all these things I left and there are all these things that are happening. And, it's a product though, and we did it with all people of color, and so I guess when the lesson to the industry, whenever I hear that we're having struggles of diversifying our business, I'm just saying, well, the main struggle we're having is just intention, and purpose. The struggle we're really having is just we're not intentional enough, and you have to have that. And I think that for everybody, my message and what I've learned, because I didn't think my career was going to be right where it is now, and so I'm happy to go into all the specifics. It's been a lot of difficult months. The same kind of thought process when I left the Washington Post, which is hard to do after 22 years, to go and do a startup that seemed like a smaller job. I didn't want to be afraid, right? I didn't want to not do something out of fear, and I wanted to shake myself up a lot, not be so comfortable. And everything I learned in 5 years, it paid off. That paid off, because what I learned about our business and what you can do is worth its weight in gold. It's also probably led me to the LA Times, because I saw everything we're doing inside Walt Disney. It's hard to do these things inside a really big company. You know, that's the other part we don't talk about. You're in big companies, there's so many layers of leadership and decision making. You have to navigate this huge ocean, you know, to do things. And so part of leaving to go to the LA Times was, you know, trying to see if I could bring some of what I learned the last 5 years at the Undefeated to an established newspaper. But I would have never even been in a position to consider it and think about it had I not done these other things. And it starts basically with, you know, Marcus Broccoli luring me in to be national editor, you know, because I was always kind of just trying to put one foot in, but then trying to slide out and go back to writing. And it was a trajectory from there. And so I would say, man, everybody who wants to be a leader, because I look at it first there beyond editors. I think Dorothy was saying something, we were offline about leadership, and you can lead from anywhere, you know, and you can, if you have leadership that in your soul, and you know you can lead people, and people will listen to you, you can be any kind of executive you want to be. You can run anything you want to run. And I think we need to have that kind of level of aspiration. I think sometimes we're intimidated by how big the job looks. You know, people say, I can't see myself there, you know, at the top of but actually it's bird by bird, step by step. If you can lead, you actually can lead the top things. And no one says it has to be done in one way. That's part of it, you know, and invent the way you want to lead. You know, I told people taking the LA Times that I know there's a lot of corporate kind of things that people have. There's 30, 60, 90-day plans. There's, you know, I've never been a big PowerPoint person. I'm very intuitive about things. You know, I lean into motivation and really trying to reach down and help empower people. And so everybody's got their own leadership, you know, techniques, their style. And that's the thing about it. You can be who you want to be. And once you get that opportunity, then you get to define, you know, what leadership be and help to raise the next crop of leaders. And so my plea to everybody is like, man, we need you, right? We need different voices, different, you know, sensibilities, different approaches at the very top levels, the mid levels, the low levels, the ranks of our industry, if we're going to really change it. And our industry is important to change. All the industries are important to change. But you know what? The number one industry is important to change is ours, because we're the ones that tell everybody else about the world. We're the ones that report and chronicle and document. You know, that adage about, you know, newspapers, and it's beyond newspapers being the first rough draft of history, is true. You know, when people look back, whether it's on the Barack Obama presidency or the Kamala Harris vice presidency or the pandemic or, you know, any major shift, we are the ones that tell you how to think about it. You know, the push in this country, the acceleration of multiculturalism and how we live with together, we're documenting that, right? Immigrants coming to this country from many places, we're the ones to do that. So we have to be diverse, right? Like that's essential to a society, and it's essential to having the right kind of filter on it. And so it's super important in our industry. So we have to be aggressive about that and purposeful. And the only way it starts with, we need more people. We need more people who want to go from, you know, I was at ESPN. I loved all of my brothers and sisters who were on air. You know, got close to all, you know, Stephen A. Loved him, loved to see him. He's a singular sports broadcaster. I think the number one in the country. The research shows that. Maria Taylor left, just got this great, fantastic job at NBC, but we need people who are running the networks, putting them on. We need people making decisions about who gets to be the next Maria Taylor or Stephen A. Smith. Those are the people you don't see. They may not be, always doing the interviews, but these are the people that we really need. And so Mike's back. Mike, go ahead. You take over.
Yeah, I didn't plan to have such a quick departure. I'm trying to keep my hands off of everything. So listen, I think we're seeing one question in the chat room, and I think whether you're starting this business or whether you're high up and someone's in administration, print, broadcast, whatever, digital. So I think a lot of times people feel like they're not being heard, and it feels to me like you're always being heard. Talk about that a little bit. You've been editing for a very long time, one way or the other. How do you make that work? Because you're very optimistic, clearly, about where we are and where we're going.
I'm gonna be just by temperament more of a glass half full person, and look, we started Undefeated. If there were anybody on here, we had a lot of struggles, a lot of down, sometimes felt like not treated quite like we should be treated, not given the resources. But, I always think about these things and try to look at history, we come from a place, and a people and that have survived so much. And I always think about like all those people that came before me. It gets to be a cliche, but it's actually true, right? All of the people that got us to this place, and that's the people who are not here. And, where you go back to the Harriet Tubmans and the Ida B. Wells, people call Ida B. Wells, they think they have a lynching, they call her, go investigate it. You think about Thurgood Marshall, driving down dark roads, people sneaking them into town, hiding them, death threats, going into courtrooms, all white courtrooms, going to Supreme Court, winning 29 of 32 cases, pushing and changing the nature of the country. When you think of all of those people, but our Black journalists, that were pioneers and the people who covered these things and couldn't eat in places, couldn't stay in hotels. We owe that, right? It's like we got to this point where we're all on a Zoom screen talking about what we're talking about. And so I try to like harken back and think about just that trajectory of history. And I think all the people who helped me get to this point that I'm in my career, but I think about the process of breaking down and changing the country. And so to me, I think, well, whatever struggle I have is not like Thurgood Marshall's struggle, it's just not, I don't have it as bad as Jimmy Hicks and other people who were pioneering Black journalists who came up, through the Black press and documented, the change in this country, and so that's you. And so to me, and I'm not supporting trolling on Twitter, but when, I sometimes tell young people, it's difficult to people saying these bad things to you and get trolled on Twitter, but it's not the same as death threats, literal, really. And so I just try to keep things in perspective. And so I feel like we owe it to people to push forward, and we take a little bit, but, you push back. People push on you, you push back. I do believe that, I guess to your question, I try to, there's always figure out how do you reach people, right? You don't always reach people with fire. You sometimes have to reach people in different ways, and figure out how to bring people to your thinking. I really think that I'm mostly a person that wants to bring people together. I'm proud to have advocated for a lot of Black journalists and to help their careers. But by the way, I've helped a lot of white journalists in their careers. I've helped a lot of them become successful. So I just think like, we are all have multiple identities, right? I don't think any of us wants to be seen one way. There's probably some of us grew up, in poor circumstances. Some of us, went to private schools, right? And had, a road pace. Some of us are in cities, some of us in rural backgrounds, some of us are religious and some of us are not. Some of us like to hoop like me. I was on a screen with another brother that said, enough of the sports metaphors, because I don't do any sports. Everybody's got something different that they do. Somebody might be sailing as their thing, and so I just think we have multiple identities. We should just say we can be all the things we want to be. Black can be one of your identities. Doesn't have to be your only identity. And so that I feel is, nor does journalism have to be your only identity. You shouldn't just say that's some separate thing, that you be a journalist and you can't be anything else. So I try to look at people where they are, try to connect with people and find out where's that connection? Where can you connect with people?
I think that's great advice for us all. I'm saying in the chat, one of the questions is, when you're out looking for work and when you're looking for a job or moving along, is it more important to have a significant education? I mean, maybe a master's degree or experience. I mean, how would you characterize those things?
I'm going to say something that Bob Iger, who, executive chairman of Disney, ran the CEO for many years, the Walt Disney Company, and really brilliant guy, a leader. I got fortunate to get to be close to him when I was at Disney. He says we tend to overvalue experience and undervalue talent. And I think that's true. Experience is important to get and to have and to learn from, but it's not everything. And sometimes people get knocked out of jobs and knocked out of places because of experience. And talent, talent is talent. You can be great when you're 23, you can be great in your second year in the league, I mean, so I just think like talent and spotting talent, I don't, it's hard for me. I don't get into too much of like, here is the path to get to a place and go to school and get a master's and get these things. If people feel like that's what they want to do and they see that as something they need and they feel great. I'm not here to say there's some singular boxes to check, because people get lots of different places. We know lots of big mega billionaires and stuff didn't even finish college, right? Like Bill Gates. So I just think like there are lots of ways to get to a place, and I think finding your own path, not kind of being directed by others' path, but finding your own path is the right way to think about it. I'm
going to go back in the chat room for a minute, but I wanted to hear you talk about a little bit about the long road, the journey, 40 some years. When we all sat down at IBM Selectrics, I don't know, when the late 70s and 80s, nobody knew anything about digital. There was nothing to think. We were just happy to have that electric typewriter, if you had an electric typewriter. And the whole thing has changed dramatically, which, makes, I think, people a little nervous in terms of where is this going? Where do you think all this is going? I mean, particularly with you have a challenge to turn a major newspaper on the planet into something different. Right? Am I wrong? Am I overstating that?
No, look, I just like honored to be here through and see and still be working, right? And through all of it. And it's really a gift, it's exciting. It's the most as exhilarating a time that I've ever been in this business, because we're remaking it. And it's not just like our profession, we're in the midst of a digital revolution, and technology is speeding rapidly. It allows us more advantages. It allows us to know more about who consumes us, how they consume us, why they consume us. We can build data sets. We just have these advantages, and they're tools. And look, I get it. Some of us, it's harder to come to the tools. It's harder, to change the mindset. I just take the part of the business I'm in, newspapers, that I've been in most of my career, with the exception of that 5-year gap when I went to ESPN and we started the Undefeated. But most of it has been in newspapers, and newspapers have a structure. They're organized kind of the same way, but they're organized around a product that is fading, which were print sections. Now, the thing about a newspaper is beautifully curated. It's one of the things that Jeff Bezos said when he first bought it. I was there. It was like he marveled at the curation. That actual human beings would put this thing together and put it together every single day with sections. In the first section, is all the important stuff on the front, and then the news is inside. But if you like local, you can pull out that metro section. And then, but if you might like go straight to sports, you pull out that sports section. And people do this every single day and marveled at it. But how do you do that in the digital era when people are coming all kind of ways and discovering and finding it? And it's a whole different way of consumption. And part of it I think about, is like, we can't be organized and do the same things we have done for every single year and expect to get a new crop of people who are coming and who have, by the way, they might have a Netflix subscription, they might have an HBO Max subscription, they may have some super Spotify subscription, they may have like 5 things. And then you say, well, I want you to get the LA Times, please. I'm going to appeal to you. I gotta find a way to appeal to them so they go into their wallet. If we're going to get that generation that hasn't grown up in reading newspapers that we got that were dropped at a door. I used to deliver those, and I still get them. I just walked outside and got my series of 3 papers, that, and I like to have it, but that's my habit. And I developed other habits afterwards, because I read all the kind of stuff online like everybody else. So, you go down and you find stuff, you discover stuff. So it's on us to figure out how to reach the people. It's not on them, it's on us to make the LA Times attractive. And we have a lot for that is attractive. We have compelling journalism. We have some of the best journalists that exist in the entire world. We have something that's foundational. So that doesn't change. It's like what we do, like as our core main thing, has stood the test of time. Like journalism is not going away. Let me just say, people have tried to take bats to it and grenades to it and said how terrible they are, but it's not going away, because there's just certain things that only journalists can find out, things that people don't want you to know. For instance, holding government accountable. We just have advantages, and it's a craft, it's a profession with skills. But then how do we get that journalism to people who may not have grown up picking up a newspaper? And how do we tell them that we're essential to their lives? And my contention, is, and what I've learned a lot from others, there are lots of ways to reach people with storytelling. In the early days, Mike, you might have had this happen in your newsroom. In the early days of the internet and the digital revolution, and as we were transformed, people didn't like to use the word content. I'll raise my hand. Content seemed like an odd word for journalists to use. Everything was journalism, but everything's not journalism. There is journalism, but there's also other kinds of content. Other storytelling, other forms that, is also interesting in ways to reach people. We could call it journalism. I'll say this, some of the storytelling that happens on social platforms like TikTok and Instagram is among the best that exist. Is up there with film of major motion picture films, in the way that people do it in the terms of the creativity. And so you think about who's creative out there. I look at it like, what's the broader ecosystem of creativity? can we bring that into our ecosystem to LA Times? That's my contention. We can bring lots of form into it and lots of other kinds of storytelling, not just journalists, but they don't all have to have jobs. The other thing about our business is that everybody doesn't want a job. You know, we're not so important. Everybody doesn't want to cover courts or, you know, say I'm going to come to you and cover politics and have a career. Everybody doesn't want to do that. So part of it is that, you know, finding a ways to bring people into your orbit that we associate with them. They may be doing things on their own, but we just want them to be LA Times people. We want you to be one of our people. You know, you may be on your own platform doing your own thing. You might have 5 other things, but let us be one of those things you do. So I just think this is a broader way of thinking about the way in which people are getting information and telling stories that we should break up. You know, it's you know, I'm not for convention, you know, and I think we're in an era where we have to constantly look and evolve if we're going to get, you know, the audiences that are there for us to get.
This is sort of a one to Candy Merriweather's with us, and then Dorothy. Similar questions, and so maybe you can address them together. The first question is it necessary to have a white booster to break into executive leadership? And then Dorothy's question is, you mentioned earlier that diverse hiring is intentional. You've done that all your life. How do you get hiring managers to be more intentional, to hire more Black journalists? And I guess I would toss in, from what we seem to be seeing now in terms of people are getting top jobs, including you, and certainly so many, not many, but more sisters than we have seen in our lifetime getting top jobs. Maybe people are being more intentional. I mean, what do you think of all of that?
Look, I think that the reckoning, you know, I guess has been euphemistically caused. Everything that happened in the protests last summer and, you know, the tragic, you know, murder of George Floyd and everything that happened after, I think that did have some impact. I certainly think it had an impact on a lot of companies. You know, it wasn't smooth, and every outcome wasn't a great outcome, but it did have an impact. And I think some change and some things that happened in places happened as a result of that, and it happened to people pushing on it. And so that's great. You have to see how much it changes over time, you know, that carries over time. But I also think that, you know, it's up to leaders to, I think, when you are a leader of color, I'm just going to speak that to, you know, you have an opportunity, and what you do with that opportunity also says something, you know, about you, you know, and so I do think we have to be also, you know, braver and more fearless about that. And not feel like, well, once you do get the jobs, there's certain things you can't do because you have to kind of, you know, blend in and do. No, if you come into it and you get an opportunity, change things, shake things up, and in any way you feel is appropriate. And it's an interesting thing, the human behavior. Whenever a leader takes over, and it doesn't mean whether the person is Latino or African American, you know, Asian American, or white, or woman, you know, just leaders. People take over, all of a sudden, a lot of people, you know, they come to you, they want to be your friend, they have ideas for you. You're leaders, people gravitate and they want to show you what they can do. And so that's just human nature, you know. However you lead a place, whoever takes over, people all of a sudden, and I've been in the same, you know, new leader takes over at the places that I've been, then, you know, you got to get to know that leader. You want to figure out, you want to like hope that leader will help you achieve your own goals. So that's just human nature. So whatever you choose to focus on and emphasize and do, people are gonna say, well, you know, this is important to a leader. This is how leaders lead. And they do some of those things. And if they don't, then probably they're not you know, they may not be right in favor with that leader. So I just think some of this just boils down to human nature, human behavior. I mean, you know, which is part of how we got in this problem, right? It's not always so intentional that people don't want to do things. It's just that they are who they are, right? They don't know how to do it, or it's not high enough of a priority for them. You know, I've worked with a lot of great managers and leaders and executives, and many of them, they were really great, decent people. They wanted to do the right thing, but they just weren't able to succeed at it. And part of it is that sometimes you know what there is to do. You just got to go do that, you know?
This is an interesting question. Someone's asking about the role of digital media in misinformation. For example, people who consistently are trying to obstruct the January 6th committee. And sometimes I do feel personally that sometimes we tell things as if they're true. You know, nothing really did happen January 6th. You know, maybe Trump still is a president. I mean, what's our role in all that?
Well, you know, digital media is a broad term, right?
Right, true.
And so I just think that every media outlet, every media, you have to evaluate it for what it is, because everybody's doing different things.
Right.
You know, there's certain people that their main job is journalism. They have reporters that go find things out, you know, and report on it. And I think those places, they have the obligation to bring people the best information, the best, most accurate reporting and analysis and commentary and build reporting around the story. I mean, and bring the best version of the truth as we know it. You continue to build on that version of the truth. You know, there's not one single truth, right? There's always multiple layers of stories. We know that. And stories are continuing stories and ongoing stories. You know, but I think a lot of times the people that, but now it's a very democratized, the internet is democratized information. You know, lots of people, anybody can, you know, set up a site and set it up around ideology if they want. They can set it up around, you know, religion if they want. They can set it up around race. They can set it up around anything they want and basically give you what their belief system is, and some people who have those similar belief systems will gravitate toward that and say, this is the absolute truth, you know, no matter what perspective it's coming from. I don't think that genie is out of the bottle. I don't think you can police that genie. You know, it's nothing you can do about that. I think the thing that the places that are the bastions of journalism have to continue to report and talk about their journal and be open to critique and be open to response and engagement. And we have, those are us in that part of our business, have to, you know, be really vigilant. It's a challenging time for that question, right? Like you say, Mike, because there is so much disinformation and so much intentional disinformation, and there's just so many divisions. If the divisions in the country exist outside of the context of media, there are divisions in the country born over a lot of the change in the country, and some of it has to do with geography and where people are and ideology and certainly politics. But journalism, as I said, again, is foundational. We have a craft that is practiced with and that I feel like is really important for like a civil democracy.
I know, sir, we've got quite a few young folks on the call, and I'm just, if you would go back 20 years, 25 years, you've been an editor a long time in one form or the other. What do you, when you're interviewing, when you're looking at resumes, when you're looking at stuff, what are you looking for? What's going to work for young people now in 2021? I mean, what do they need to have? What do they need to bring to the table?
Ideas. I'm always looking for ideas. I'm looking for people's thinking. I'm looking for what's going to stand what's going to stand out and be a differentiator for whatever company that I'm working in, right? So who's going to bring something that's not conventional, that I can't get everywhere, in whatever form that is? And so, I'm really looking for people to stand out in however they want to stand out. I mean, I've told this story probably many times. So if anybody's heard the story, go take the time to get some coffee now. But, during a period of time, Master Tespasian, who's at the time he came we were at the Washington Post, and this is a time we were hiring like crazy. There was so many interviews going through there. I mean, getting to the finalists and interviews, we just had a lot of job opens. He was coming for a Redskin beat. He'd only been, I think he's 2 years out of college. He came in, he was applying for a Redskin beat. It was the Redskins at the time, the horrible, terribly named at the time before it was the Washington football team. And he came in and he had get down to the final interviews. And it was me and Marty and a couple of other people who had that final interviews. And he came in, he had on a 3-piece suit, caught my attention, by the way. This is not anything, not that I'm saying everybody's got to put on a 3-piece suit, but it caught my attention because it was a level of format I was not accustomed to seeing people of his generation age, just wasn't. So that got my attention. He had gone to Kinko's or wherever. He had a binder folder that had, here's my coverage beat plan. He passed out his thing, and it had a whole PowerPoint that had been printed out. And here's was his approach to covering the beat and what he would do on off days and on days. It had a lot of culture in it. He was emphasizing that. And it was really before it was even over, and I was turning to one of our colleagues, I'm just saying in my mind, we're hiring that kid, absolutely hiring him. And, it was just, he stood out. And, so sometimes it's like, it's your ideas. It might be a small thing. At the Undefeated, we hired somebody, Rhiannon Walker went on and did coverage. She was at the University of Maryland. I had given a talk at the University of Maryland. And because George Solomon, I think he thought that I was on contract to him. And anytime something was happening at the University of Maryland in the Shirley Povich sports program, that I would be available, because he always was calling. George was a former Washington Post sports editor. And so I gave the talk, and afterwards, everybody was gone. And I knew a couple of the students there. One was Kofi Yeboah, somebody else I gave a job to early on at the Undefeated while he was in school. But Rhiannon hung back. She did not have a job at all, but she's graduated. She came back, waited till everybody left, and then gave me her packet material. And I took it, but she knew Kofi, there was the other guy, Jesse, and they were all, Kofi had started a sports site at University of Maryland. His other brother, Jesse, had started another publication, University of Maryland. And Rhiannon had been, and they were all talking to each other. And it was how they talked to each other and the conversation about reaching new audiences and what to do was what really ultimately led me to hire her, because of the conversation she was having with them. And it was such a smart conversation. I was just listening to them. And so I would have tried to, if I had some, I would hire them all. I did hire, Kofi was still in school. We hired him while he was in school, before he left. And so I just think like there are lots of ways, when I think about like, you're a hiring manager, I'm thinking of different ways to hire people. It's not all the same, because people are not going to answer the same questions. Sometimes we ask the same questions of people. Well, what do you want to be in 5 years? People are like, I don't know where I want to be in 5 years. I don't know where I want to be next year. people are, you're just looking for different ways to bring in new people, but lots of things can stand out. To me, the most thing is just like, how do you think? Somebody's thinking differently and has great ideas. They have my attention. I will say that there are two skill sets. Here's another thing, and it's a stereotype. I think it's unfair to young people because I think everybody who is young and you're in your 20s, you're expected to have super digital acumen. We think everybody who is there, they grew up in the era and they have digital DNA and they should be, we're always trying to bring that into the big places, which is kind of an unfair putting that on that generation, right? But I'll say two skill sets that are undervalued. One of them is writing. If you can write, it's just like I liken it to basketball, which I still play, because if you can shoot, you can play that game forever. You can be someplace playing pickup, and you can be 90 years old. If you can shoot, you can get them down the court. You can play that game forever. If you can write, you will be in this profession in every iteration. Someplace. I don't care what part of it. If you can write, you have a job somewhere. And it's an undervalued skill. You'll be writing stuff on SVP's Scott Van Pelt, show, you the Undefeated. You can be at the Los Angeles Times or the Washington Post. Monica will vouch for me there. If you can write, you will have a job someplace, no matter which way our business goes. But reporting, I've got to say this, in the internet era of people commenting on the things and taking other people's reporting and quickly, and hot takes and essays, which I'm a big proponent of essays and commentary. But reporting, going out and finding out stuff, very underrated skill. Don't sleep on that. People who really do reporting and go out in places, actually go to a community, find a story that nobody else has, where you're out there on your own in a place. Man, reporting is, I'm hiring people who are really good reporters, and particularly at a young age.
I think your point about being able to write, be able to report, and have good ideas is something that we all should embrace, because you can be sitting around for 15 years as a journalist and really I hate to say it, but you haven't done anything innovative in quite some time, and that's not gonna help our business, I don't think. Anybody else? What else is out there, Lynn?
Yeah, I haven't gone into the chat, so
I'm working through the chats now. I'm working through the chats now.
Yeah. What's up, Betty?
Yes, and I've been I think you caught me because I was sending notes to Betty. But
got
Kevin,
some great luminaries here. And thank you,
do.
Lynn, for being here. Mike's been, y'all are, forget about masterclass me. Mike's been through and a lot, and been in 2 papers in Philadelphia, and Philadelphia, great city for journalism, and done a lot of things as a leader in our profession, to drive our profession ahead. So he's got a lot to contribute.
He does indeed. Kevin, what you were saying about writing, and I tell people, young journalists, all the time, if you can write, you can make it in this business. And in fact, being able to write is an asset in whatever profession you go into, but certainly in the media. And these days, managers are expecting you to be able to do everything. And certainly you have to write. Certainly you have to be able to write.
Can I interrupt for a minute then?
What now?
This is Walter. Can I interrupt for a minute?
Yes.
There was a question early on, Kevin. I wasn't sure if you got it because I lost my signal for a minute, but could you share the insights of your on how you balance the cultural perspectives in the newsroom that is arguably one of the most diverse cities in the US?
Yeah, look, I think I'm just getting to LA, and it is great. I mean, I'm meeting with people. You know, when you talk about representation and, you know, our Latino journalists, we have a great number, but that's a place where, you know, we have to be better, you know, as an institution and reflecting as communities. But we have, you know, we have the largest Asian population, you know, the state with the largest Asian population. There's a lot of things that in a lot of subcultures, a lot of groups and communities, it's a very complex place, you know, and it's a lot of great opportunities, a lot of places we can reach. You know, I'm really interested, you know, COVID has slowed some things down, but I'm really interested. I do believe in presence and finding ways to actually physically be present in communities. I know a lot of our journalists who are connected to those communities are up for that. You know, I want us to be really, you know, to do some things that maybe haven't been done in those communities, you know, in addition to storytelling, you know. So yeah, I hope that we, you know, we have a rich newsroom now. Want to make it even better that way, you know, even more diverse a model, and I want to hope that is reflected in the kind of things we do in Southern California and the rest of California.
And in that regard, the other question that came up with, it kind of follows in your thinking earlier about writing, but the transition from full-time writing to full-time editing, what are the thoughts that goes into your mind as to the pluses and minuses of doing this, or are there challenges there in doing that?
Yeah, look, I you know, as somebody who was in love with writing, I still feel like I'm a writer in my soul, always longing to get back to it. You know, I do, you know, you can get back to it though. You know, I'll say there are other ways to do it. We've had a number of editors, you know, write books, do other things. You know, hey, I may even at the LA Times, knock on wood, because I didn't do much at the Undefeated, but I may write an occasional thing from the you know, from the executive editor, you know, if I get moved to it. So there's lots of ways to do that. You know, I think the transition is hard, right, when you really are thinking about writing, but I think it starts with leadership. Do you feel like you have something that you can offer? And if you do, are you willing to allow to get into a structure that would allow that leadership to further? Because you can be a leader practically anywhere and bring people to you, have meetings, but to be part of the structure of leadership does take you to say, okay, I gotta assume and take on a lot of other lives other than my own, you know. And sometimes I think when we're writers and editors, we think, man, our life is full, and our work life is full just trying to get my stories out, get my story through my story list, do this complex reporting, do this writing, you know, get it edited, get it. We think we're busy enough, and then we think, man, now I'm gonna be responsible for other people and got to deal with all of the other things. So it does take a kind of mentality to be willing to do that, because, you know, as I've said to many leaders, I know when we started Undefeated, a lot of those jobs we have for people, this is the first time they had those jobs. You know, my managing editor, you know, when I took over, she had never been a managing editor. She's tremendous, brilliant. Raina Kelly, she's now the editor-in-chief of the Undefeated. But she was like, you know, she had been a deputy editor in a magazine, you know, and so it was a whole different job. And a lot of times you have to tell people, like, all the problems and the challenges and the personal thing, that is the job. So don't think it's going to be an aberration. That you just have to say that is the job. Dealing with problems is part of the job of leaders. You have to solve things. You have to bring people together. You have to figure out stuff. It's like you can't complain about that part of it if you want to do leadership. Like that is actually the job. So you get to have your fun, you get to shape things, people can follow you, but you do have to deal with those things. And I think that's maybe the hardest thing that, temperamentally maybe draws people away from that, because they don't want to deal with what they might consider the headaches. You can't just have that glory without that part of it. And so, part of it, I think, Walter, is just really getting yourself in a state of mind. But I do think that this is not by way of scaring people away. I actually want to lure more people into doing it, because we need more voices and more ways to do it. And just because people have been in these jobs, whatever the jobs are, doesn't mean that there's a single model for how to get there or how you should do the job. Like that's the other great thing. If you're the boss, you get to decide how you want to be a boss, what you choose to focus your time on, what you choose to emphasize. That's your choice to put your own stamp of leadership on the job you have. And that's the opportunity, I got one of our outstanding leaders right here, Kimberly Kelly. I'm looking at her, Washington Bureau Chief. There are not a whole lot of, I think, African-American, relatively young Washington Bureau Chiefs, and she's, and, a Black woman who's a Washington Bureau Chief of, and so, look, she's new, she's going to put her own stamp on what Washington coverage should be, and so I think the opportunity is always to take a job and shape it, and sometimes that's difficult in the transition of it, no matter where you are, but that's where the opportunity is.
In another regard, in that same regard, your days as a reporter, you cultivated relationships with sources that I'm questioning. How does that come into play as a manager, and how important is that to you, A, as a reporter, and B, as a manager? And before you answer that, let me raise this question to you and Michael on this. We've got a couple of people with their hands up that didn't put questions in the chat. Did you guys want to take those questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're rolling down now. Then we got about 15 minutes to take them. Yes, please.
Okay. All right. So go with the relationships question, Kevin, and then we'll have Juliet Beverly on the next question.
Yeah, look, relationships is, I think, the key thing, right? I mean, and I think that's a good analogy. When you're a reporter, you're constantly developing sources, whether you're writing a story or not, because you're not developing sources just for a single story. You're hoping to have a relationship that's going to help you over time in other things, so that the sources, people are calling you, with stories. That's the hope. You hope that relationship is such. And I think relationships of all kinds matter. I mean, I hope that I will develop those within the area of our, and we don't really have a single area of readership, because we're trying to grow our digital audience. That audience can be anywhere, but you want to know. I'll start with, because we're anchored in Los Angeles, being oh, I was muted, my bad.
Just for last sentence.
Yeah. So I think that, I'm going to try to connect with people. I'm open to developing relationships, going out in communities and having my own relationships with people and finding out, so there will be definitely some reporter in me to go out and talk to people and be present myself and learn as much as I can learn,
I guess that was the point I'm trying to make. Most leaders have to remember that to continue reporting as a manager is one thing the point you want to make. Okay, Beverly, Juliet Beverly is coming up next, and Betty Baye will be the next question after that.
Hello, thank you for your time today, and everyone who put this masterclass together. My name is Juliette Beverly. I'm the senior editor for brainfacts.org, and it's published by the Society for Neuroscience. I've been in the science writing space for about 14 years, and right now I'm kind of in a mid-career life crisis, I like to call it. So that's very fun. But I wanted to ask you, all of the things that an editor does on a daily. You're not just sitting in for the audience, you're doing a whole lot more than your reporters will ever really see. How are you balancing out, that business aspect of the job that has to be done, while making sure that the, quote unquote content is still living up to everything you expect it to be, and then maybe not burning yourself out in the process?
Well, you've just articulated really wonderfully just the challenge. I think the hardest challenge is how do you spend your time? And I think that's what that all, and for me, it's a work in progress. So far, I'm gravitating toward the things that so far that I'm drawn to, and I started with just trying to get to know the people that work, at the LA Times. And I've spent a lot of time, so far meeting with people in groups and individually, and making myself accessible, and the caucuses and others, and just to kind of be available to people, but also to learn and take people's memos and ideas and all of that. I think I've been a little short, and transparently, I gotta consume more, because once you have your day so scheduled with meetings, when do you get a chance to read the product and listen to the podcast, because you're producing so much content? So I gotta figure out my mechanism for making sure that I know the work well enough. But the overarching question is, I think you got to trust your teammates. The one thing I've said is, there's no way that I can have my finger on every single thing, and everything can't scroll up to the executive editor. Part of it is that everything can't roll up to me. All decisions can't cascade up, and I think that's part of empowerment. Ultimately, you're not going to be great unless you empower more people at a news. So my philosophy is going to be empower more people, give people responsibility and let them do it. And then they let you know what they need to do. They let me know what I need when I need to intercede or intersect. But I can't, you can't have your finger on every single thing. There's some big things that I need to really focus on. If we're really going to transform something, be, what I would say more than a newspaper, I just made that up, then that's a really big thing. It's a cultural thing. We have to figure out how to execute that. And I'm gonna give a lot of attention to that. But I'm gonna consume the journalism, and people point me to places, but I'm gonna put people in place and continue to kind of trust and let people say, look, let them know that they're empowered. You're empowered to make stuff happen, and I want to have more people in a place that have authority to do things and feel like they can make the LA Times theirs. I want people to say, this is my LA Times. I hope we have 550 people, or however our staff is, say, this is my LA Times. It belongs to me, and not just like looking to others in a small collection of leaders and one executive editor. I don't know. Does that answer your question, Julia?
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Ms. Baye, you're on.
Yeah. Hi,
Betty,
Kevin.
a legend. You all, if you all don't know her, you should.
Well, Kevin, I wanted to thank you. I made a note in the chat, and I wanted to specifically say to a lot of the young people that a lot of your mentors won't necessarily be Black, because everybody who is your skin is not your kin. And the intentionality is really very important, because I have watched in my years in journalism, and I didn't come to journalism traditional route. I came out of the civil rights movement. I never learned grammar. So editors were always wonderful. But I appreciate there ought to be Pulitzer Prizes for editors who turn our shit into sugar. You know what I'm saying? Because they get you, they hear your voice, and you know, and they take care of you and make sure you sound right. But I have seen in my years over NABJ that I have seen people who have ascended and have made absolutely no difference in terms of African-American hiring because they were paralyzed and fearful. And every time they were going to hire a Black person, it was like, no matter how experienced, they were taking a great risk. Because if we were not outstanding or just mediocre, like a whole bunch of white folks in the newsroom, then they took it personally. It's like, okay, I can't take a chance. And so I really appreciate the idea of being intentional and looking at what people bring to the table in terms of life experiences and all of that, because most of you all, I'm about 10 years older than most of you all. And, you know, because I came into the business later, but I was always appreciative of the people who could hear my voice, you know, as a writer, because I came into journalism because I wanted to tell stories. I come from storytelling Negroes. They told stories, you know, they didn't even know they were funny. They didn't know that they were being profound or whatever. And we need people who want to be storytellers, who want to, like you say, go into places where other people won't go. And I remember growing up in New York, Jimmy Breslin. And one of the things I loved about Jimmy Breslin was that he went into the buildings where the rats were. He went into the, you know, before I even knew I wanted to be a journalist, I used to read his stuff because he went to the people. So besides you, like Kevin, everything can't cascade up, but you gotta have good people in the middle, because many people's careers have been destroyed. Their ambition have been destroyed. Their passion has been destroyed by people in the middle, not at the top necessarily, but just these midline editors who don't get the message that this is a new day and this is a new way. And so they become the blocks to people progressing or being able to get a shot. So intentionality is everything. And also for your mentors, look for people who care about your talent, who want to nurse you, and they may or may not be Black people. So don't get it twisted.
Hey, that's a great lesson that you just delivered here. That was a master class thread right there, right there, Betty. It's absolutely true. You know, first of all, editors are certainly undervalued, right? Like I see that Monique Jones, our former managing editor now at the Undefeated, can testify to that. I think she hopped in there, and and she's somebody that makes everybody's work better. You may not always be on the front lines of the applause, but there's a lot that goes into that. And to your point about that, I mean, I certainly had a lot of Black mentors and people that, the late Les Payne was one of the most influential in my career, but there's also just a lot of people, the way we think about mentors, I would take it even beyond mentors, just people that may be influential and helpful in your careers. And hey, people like Phil Bennett and the managing editors who came before me, Phil Bennett, Steve Call, but at Walt Disney, Bob Iger, really, really helped to help us get to what the Undefeated, to where the visibility and attention that it deserves at the Walt Disney Company. But it's just lots of people that you've intersected with that can be influential that are white, and so that's absolutely true.
And in that vein, Kevin,
Josh,
yeah, Josh's question actually is pretty much in that vein. I'd like to bring him on. Josh, Come on.
Yes, sir. Just noting about the undervalued skills of writing and reporting that you talked about. As somebody that is a young writer, how do you emphasize, developing, your journalistic voice and your tone, and just getting that in the community and improving your creative storytelling and your reporting skills?
I would say two things is practice. You gotta write to do anything. It's like, man, it's like shooting. I hate to keep going these sports metaphors. You go in the gym, and work on your 3-point shot, work on your step back. You got to put in that rep and work on it, but also study. Study the writers that matter to you and the new storytellers. Study what people do. See what what it is that they're doing there. And sometimes you can reach out to people, say, I admire your work. How did you come to get that? How did you do that particular technique? I think that's very important. We shouldn't be bashful. Most people, I think, a lot of people, when you reach out to them, they love to see that. They love to talk about their work. So I say study and get the reps in, and I think that's, keep sharpening your skills and be intentional about that.
Yes, sir. Well, then along that line, I'm looking to be mentored. Anybody in the chat, I joined NABJ over a year ago. I'm at Prairie View A&M University, podcasting, playing football. So, I'm just I'm putting my head out there. This conversation, I love listening to people that are smarter than me. Any advice, any guidance is greatly appreciated.
Well, let me just throw out one thing. I mean, look, I'm going to say I'm going to adopt the same thing that I did when we're at the Undefeated. When people have ideas, because we're going to extend the range of work to people, and people have ideas, pitch. You can send me a pitch, but also I know, because I came from the Undefeated, it's very easy to access that place. And it's also a place that has, a tradition of working with HBCUs. We've got a whole program associated. And so there's a lot of college students that Undefeated's published, and I think, you got ideas and voice, you can certainly send it, volunteering Monique Jones, but send things to me too. If you think there's something for the LA Times, there's a chance to get published. And I think once you start building up your publishing reps, and the more things you get published, people look at you different. And so, that's, those are two invitations. I don't have a right to put Monique there on blast, but I just did it. We're close. So, but you can send it to me too.
Can I go back? I just wanted to say amen to Betty, but I also wanted to defend some of the Black editors that helped all of us over many, many years. Fletcher Clark, who's now passed on.
Absolutely.
Robert Maynard, who I met as a 21, 22-year-old. He said, if you ever need a job, reach out to me. He didn't know me from a hole in the wall. Mm-hmm. And next thing I know, I was working in Rochester, New York. I mean, so that's one of the reasons I feel so important about us doing these master classes, is that we've got to be, we can't just have people of color in top jobs or in decent jobs. We need people who are going to be authentic and authoritative and try to make a difference.
Absolutely, Mike. And
like
look,
I said this.
I said this about, and it goes for Mike Days too, you guys. I mean, and there've been lots of. I'm glad you mentioned that. I mean, there've been lots of top editors around the name, including Les Payne, Milton Coleman.
Les Payne,
right? The Washington Post for a long time. Milton Coleman was very important to me at first when I was a student. And he was just a City Hall reporter, and because here's the thing, you never know where people are going to be. Make your friends before you need them. Somebody might one day hear, but next thing they're running something, and you've had a relationship. You never know. So you just connect with people.
Anything else before we break? Anybody want to jump in?
Hi, this is Lynn. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, because I can't see anybody right now, but I can hear everybody. I just wanted to add to all of this incredible advice and comments that we have heard today, that the point that Kevin was just making, you can't burn your bridges, and said make your friends before you need them. And during my career at Ebony, I was able to succeed because I played fairly with everyone, listened to the pitches, and then it made an honest decision and was honest with the intention of what kind of story I was going to write. One thing, Kevin, I wanted to ask you, and I have a good idea, but I'd like for you to share. how would you describe your leadership style? I know you made reference to leadership style early in your comments, but how would you describe your personal leadership style?
Well, I'm going to be the kind of editor, like I've been telling some of the people, that, if there's I'm going to be the kind that likes organic conversations that would walk the newsroom. I know that's almost become a cliche. People walk the floor, but I like to know what people are doing. I see everybody as somebody, everybody can contribute to the place. Everybody, I don't care if you're an intern, an editorial assistant. I want everybody to feel like they matter to the place, and that they have something to contribute. And so that just stems about the way I grew up. And, one of my grandfather's very simple phrases that, everybody has something to offer, and I always think about that, and that he's right. Sometimes you look past people, but everybody's visible to me. So part of it is just that sense. And also really, I think empowerment and really trying to bring more people into decision-making and ideas. And so not everything to just be flowing down from the top. So I want an inclusive newsroom. I want to have an inclusive leadership style, and so I'm probably a lot less formal, than most people. I have a lot of informality, a lot of things intuitive, I like to make decisions fairly quickly, like to study, but don't want to, probably not going to produce a 90-page report. Here's the plan for the LA Times in the future. Just try to do things, We named a managing editor a couple weeks ago for new initiative, Shani Hilton, which was certainly, she's deserving, but it was also about the role, that this was going to be a different kind of role for a managing editor that was really going to work on the things that we want to do and be a bridge to our LA Times studios and other parts of and marry our journalism to other forms and other platforms and to try new things. She's not going to be the only one. It's not all on her, but it's just, she's going to be a catalyst. And so I think we'll just do things, I believe in just trying things and being unafraid to do so.
Do your employees call you Mr. Merida?
Oh, no. I mean, sometimes the young people do, and that's out of, I think, respect, and, whenever somebody says to me, Mr. Merida, I can just tell, okay, well, they probably raised a certain way, right?
Yeah.
But I don't want anybody to call me Mr. Merida. So as soon as somebody does, I like, no, just Kevin's good enough.
Okay.
That's good. We don't need that.
Okay. Excellent. Did you
Yeah,
have?
I think we're getting. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lynn.
No, I was gonna ask if you had anything to add, because I do think it's time to.
You're right. You're close. I want to say this, that I'm hoping that we can get people's email addresses from the registrations, because one of the things Lynn and I feel strongly about is trying to do something like this every month. I mean, we used to call these way back in the day the soft skills, but they're not the soft skills. Leadership is what we need to be focused on now. I mean, you can get folks who can do the digital, do the basic hands-on stuff, and we definitely, to Kevin's point, we need people who can write and people who can edit and who can do all that too. But we need people who are strong, who have the ability to lead and aren't afraid to lead. So, we want this to be a two-way street. If you have ideas about, I'd like to spend 90 minutes with X, talk to us. Let us know. And do we put our emails in this chat anywhere?
Well, I put the emails in the chat earlier. So feel free to reach out to us with your ideas, but also for a link to the editor's database or the producer's database so we can get you registered in the databases. I think that is so important that you that we have you registered. You don't have to be looking for a job right now. Just deposit your information into the databases, and it will benefit everyone, especially you. So with that, have any last words, Kevin?
Look, I thanks for the opportunity. It's been great just to be here for everybody. I really enjoy to see a lot of the faces, or at least the boxes, a lot of my friends and people. And thanks, Lynn, you and Mike moderating this, and Dorothy and NABJ putting it on. And I really appreciate just being here. You know, it's thanks to everybody for spending some time here and for your questions. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so
My
much.
last thing, Ms. Norman, Mr. Dave, did y'all put y'all's contact information in the group, in the chat?
Yeah, I put mine and Mike's.
And I put mine. Yeah, everybody.
Okay, and I put mine. So I don't know how
And
long.
don't be added again, because
Can you add it,
it don't
Mike?
last very long.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I can't access it right now. Mike,
What do you want?
if you could put
Our email, I can't see the chat. Oh, wait, let me see. Wait a minute.
They're in there. I mean, if I didn't see my earlier chat was destroyed, but I've got the later parts. We got Kevin in there,
okay,
and everybody else is adding theirs to it now.
and Lynn and Mike.
If you want to add it in now, you can type it in, but I was gonna just stash them away
Okay.
as a save it.
Okay. And mine is Lynn, LYNN at normentmedia.com, NORMENT media.com, Lynn at normentmedia.com. Feel free to reach out concerning the database.
And all that's on NAB. It's on the website anyway, isn't it? There too.
Yeah,
It should be.
I
Okay.
think I'm easy to find.
Can I just say that I'm proud of Lynn and Michael and Walter and Kevin, all of y'all negotiating all of this technology and stuff, considering that I came in on a manual typewriter. I'm like, I am proud. You all are doing good.
Oh, Betty, you just don't know. For me, it's all a miracle.
Yeah.
I just try to keep
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, I'm Facebook, Michael Days, Twitter, Days, M Days.
Mm-hmm.
So reach out, because we do, we're committed to this, and so I'm looking at some of the comments here now about things you'd want to hear about, and talk about, and
That's great.
And Kevin, I just want to say thank you for kicking this off. This has been great.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling energized by your conversation, so thank you.
I
No,
certainly am. I could not
thank
help
you,
but
guys.
take notes. So it's just been
All right,
wonderful.
Walter, thanks for
Okay.
hosting us, man.
No
And
problem.
give Donna our love, because she's a writing fool herself.
Absolutely. She's
Oh,
been
yes,
walking
yes.
around here. She's been walking around.
Mhm. Okay. Okay, so
Okay,
thank
folks,
you.
on that
We
note,
signing off, Walter?
yeah, I was gonna just say that being it all, I think we'll end it now. Is that right?
Yes.
Kevin, again, be you to be you. Thank you, sir.
All right, man.
And my
Thanks,
colleagues.
everybody.
All right.
Good night, everybody. Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thanks again.